book, and I know there's a whole bunch of folks, including myself, that just don't want to revisit the Bible. I had to I had to come back to it, for because I was forced. I was understanding, and I guess this is where there's debate of where these Hebrews, come from and who they are specifically. Because based upon my research, these are African people who migrated into the Middle East, who some of their stories, became a part of a tradition that, was later formed that we know as Hebrew Israelites, today. With a lot
what research is that? Based on my research, that these don't really exist.
See, no, we have to separate the people, the historical people, from their mythology and necessarily their history. People. The problem is that people trying to identify the Hebrews based upon the mythology. They trying to say that because,
I'm saying we're just trying to identify them based upon their book. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, well, what you got to understand is that the people had to exist to even write the book. Regardless of how you feel, they had to exist, to write the book. So like that, whatever argument anybody's trying to make that these people didn't exist, you have to argue, okay, well then who wrote it? What nation of people? Wrote the book, regardless of if all of the information is fake or not. These are the kinds of questions. So we got to remember that a lot of ancient Egyptian writings is a bunch of myth. That does not mean that the ancient Egyptians did not exist. So we have to separate. We have to separate the people, and then we have to look at this on there's a very broad history that we don't want to deal with. Now, the best way that I can articulate the whole Hebrew situation is just like the case of the folks in Louisiana and New Orleans. So we know, I think it was 2005, 2006 or something, in which Katrina came and hit. All of these people, as a result of Katrina, they split into various different places. So you have a whole bunch of folks from Louisiana, New Orleans, and Atlanta. They're in Mississippi. We got them over here in Texas. Some as far away as California. Some in super white states like, Washington and Nevada and things of this nature. Now, if a group of those people from New Orleans, decide to blend in with somebody else and create a different culture, that doesn't mean that they are not part of the same group. There's just one group that splintered off for some reason, and they developed, a different identity based upon some historical stuff that went down. And this is the same thing that happened with Hebrews. There's a whole bunch of Hebrews scattered all across Africa. What we're dealing with is one branch of these folks who migrated back and forth between the Sinai Peninsula and Assyria and Palestine.
Let me ask you a question, real fast. Let me ask you a question. When you were saying their original home was in Africa, you're talking about in Atlantic Canaan? Is that the part of Africa?
I'm talking about in North Africa in what is called the Proto-Sahara, the period of time when the Sahara.
Hold on, wait for a minute. And so do you have an archaeological find showing these people? Because I have archaeological remains in the hill country of Atlantic Canaan showing these people in the Second Bronze Age.
There's no archaeological evidence that you can say that these people spoke Hebrew.
No. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about.
But listen to what I'm saying. All you know is that you found evidence of a people there.
For people. Absolutely. Hold on. Not only just people, with certain, listen, you know they have material culture, right, with certain things. And these particular people in this area in Atlantic Canada, on the hill now, right, these particular people just didn't eat pork. Where the other people in that particular area did. They didn't find pig bones. So they did find a few things. Not a lot, not a whole gang of people, right? You're talking about very pockets of small people. Now, you're talking about, what area that you're talking about? Did they find any type of remains of people living there?
I'm talking about Central North Africa, and this is the reason why. Because the linguistics say so.
Oh, so you can't back it up
when we're comparing,
So you can't back it up with some archaeology, just linguistics, from a linguistic argument.
Yeah.
Okay.
From a linguistic argument, because here's the problem. A lot of the same deities that you have in the Hebrew Bible, you have in the Yoruba tradition of Ifa. You have to explain how the Yoruba people, all the way in Nigeria, had the same deities. We're talking about Elegba, which is actually Gabriel. It's a word metathesis. We're talking about Adam. We're talking about Eve. We're talking about Yahweh. We're talking about all of these different deities in these stories of Cain and Abel, in a sense, that you find this stuff indigenously in Nigeria, and you have to explain how their indigenous stories ended up in the Bible with these Hebrews. Then when you do a linguistic analysis, you understand that the Hebrew language is cognate with the Yoruba language. It's a very different time period. So what the linguists will do, there's a book you can read that'll be a good start for you. And I think I mentioned this before. It's by Dr. Modupe Oduyoye. He's a Nigerian linguist, and the book is titled "Words and Meaning in Yoruba Religion." It's published by Karnak House, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Karnak House, and the subtitle being "Linguistic Connections in Yoruba, Ancient Egyptian, and Semitic." And based upon the linguistics, you know that the proto-ancient Israelites and Hebrews and the proto-Yoruba folks and the ancient Yoruba folks lived in the same area at some point in time. And the meeting point and the middle point is the actual Sahara. And so you have a lot of stories, especially among Yoruba folks, that they lived in the Nile Valley, that they lived in the Sudan. And you have to wonder why the Israelites are always going back and forth in Egypt. This proto-Saharan period before the desertification is a real interest. I don't know if you have the book yet. I know I mentioned it to you in a private conversation, but Black Genesis.
Black Genesis. No, I don't got it yet.
Yeah, it's a new book that has just come out, and it really goes into detail about these proto-Saharans. You hear Dr. Clyde Winters talking about these proto-Saharans. And when you read Dr. Clyde Winters' work, all he's talking about is these black Africans that live in the Sahara, that when the Sahara started drying up, when it was no longer getting the monsoon rains, moving into places like Greece, moving into places like Saudi Arabia, moving into the Nile Valley. There's a whole bunch of articles that read about this, and we know this for a fact because you can study the language. My main focus in my studies has always been religious, because the religion is something that people hold on to the hardest. You can't. Folks is not going to get rid of their religion. And so the deities, their rituals and things of this nature is a testament to their earlier history and how they approach the divine. So this is why I got interested in this whole discussion of God and where the term comes from in the first place, because people don't get rid of their names for the Creator. So this is and this is how we know that the Hebrews, first of all, you got to understand that Hebrew is an African language. It's part of the so-called Afro-Asiatic group of languages, which derive out of East Africa, which came into Saudi Arabia.
All right, hold on for a minute.
But you got to understand, as a matter of fact, I think I'm going to find, hopefully, I think I put it in here. It should be towards the end. It's on the link that I gave, it's on page 23.
Okay.
And you'll see that all of these names in the Bible for God are the same names for God in West Africa. How do they have the same names for God? Because in the earlier days, they both come out of the same speech community. From the biblical story, the Hebrew Israelites, as Israelites, their own argument is that they are a mixed people that became a people, a settled population in Canaan. Prior to that, you don't know what language they spoke.
The
whole Hebrew language develops. The whole Hebrew language develops in Canaan.
Right.
Right. So the Canaanite.
Right.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. They speak in a Canaanite dialect. So speaking of Canaanite dialect, that area where they speaking that is the land of Canaan. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that's where their language developed.
Yeah, but they argue again. Think about what their story says.
Okay.
Their story says that their founders came out of Chaldea, which is just right over the Sinai Peninsula, which some people argue is Africa anyway.